Welcome to the 11th seminar in our Light Tackle Marathon. We are dropping a seminar every day leading up to our big light tackle sales event on April 5th and 6th. We'll feature big discounts throughout the fishing department, rod reel trade-in, benefiting kids, fresh barbecue, kids games, and prizes. You can click the link below for full details. We're excited to have Steve Griffin from Griffin's Guide Service here to talk about rockfish jigging, pretty much our bread and butter here in the Bay.
Yeah, this is what we do the most in the Chesapeake Bay.
Definitely.
And it really is a great way to get into light tackle fishing on the Bay. I feel like everybody starts with a rockfish and then moves into cobia,
Everything else,
bull redfish, and all that other stuff.
Yeah, and it's something you can do pretty much year-round.
And just about anywhere.
Yeah.
Just about anywhere.
Yep.
So what we're going to start with, because right now we're catching a lot of big fish in the Bay, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to start with what we use 99% of the time on the Bay. We like to keep it very simple. I think a lot of people overthink it. You see, I don't have a lot of colors here.
Yeah.
There's a couple different variations. The most important thing is going to be your jig heads and the weights you use to get down to the fish, or so what you're gonna do is you're gonna change your jig head weight.
And there's a lot of variables when it comes to that.
Many.
I mean, you have tide, wind, current,
depth, how far out are you casting it?
Right.
If you're gonna vertical jig, you might not need as much weight to bring it back.
Yeah.
So
if the fish are on the bottom, if the fish are mid.
Another thing, it's depending on line size. If you have a 10-pound braid,
right,
you'll get down to the bottom a lot easier than if you had a 25-pound braid.
Yeah.
So there's so many variables, and that's why we've kind of set up our go-to selections. And obviously, you're going to change to match those different conditions out on the Bay. So with the big fish, no matter what, you're going with a GI Jigs HD. That's a stronger hook. They're all 8-aught hook. The 2-ounce, 3-ounce, and 4-ounce come with a 10-aught hook, which is great for really big fish.
Yeah.
Once you get them hooked, they're not coming off. So we start even as low as a 1/2 ounce. We actually had LJ make this jig for us. He's like, what do you need a heavy-duty hook on a 1/2 ounce? Because sometimes you'll find those fish up high.
Yeah.
The stripers will be up high. So we wanted something strong that can hook into those big fish, run tight drag on them, and not bend a hook. So that's what that's for. And then obviously 1, 1.5, all the way up to 4 ounce we'll use every once in a while.
Yeah. Now, since you specifically got LJ to make that for you, what kind of situation are you seeing yourself in? You're using 1/2 ounce. So
when you see birds working, say in the winter, specifically like December, January time, I'm going to give away some secrets here. But a lot of times you'll pull in and you might see a lot of fish down on the bottom, glued to the bottom, but they're not really eating. We see it all the time, guys jigging on the bottom. The more active fish are actually up on the surface.
Okay.
So what we like to do is cast those out as far as we can, and when you pair this with a 7-inch diesel minnow or a 5-inch diesel minnow, and you pull that back across, it'll be just under the surface, a couple feet under the surface. Yeah. That's usually where the big fish are.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome.
So some lures we like to use, like I said, we like to keep it pretty simple. Pearl, hot chartreuse as far as colors. These are the Streaks XL. This is an 8-inch. Good profile for big fish. You're imitating menhaden, so that is the perfect profile. Works great. And then the 7-inch diesel minnow is a tried and true. I mean, we use that probably 90% of the time.
Yeah.
I've got a couple different colors here. This is the Sexy Mullet, my personal favorite. And then Smoky Shad, I like to use Smoky Shad or Mulletron, which is a darker color. I like to use that. We get a lot of gloomy days in the winter. So those darker, more natural colors really stand out.
Yeah.
Again, that's kind of why that Sexy Mullet works so well in the winter.
Right, it's kind of a combination of a darker color, and then you got that chartreuse in there.
A little bit of flash, good contrast. When that thing's paddling. All GI jigs, so when they go through the water, all GI jigs are going to...
They kind of roll, right?
Sort of roll through the water. So when you get that flash, they can't resist it.
Yeah, now winter fishing, awesome, but moving into the summertime, I see you got some smaller baits. Now, why is that?
Smaller baits, you're literally catching smaller fish and you're imitating a smaller bait.
Yeah.
Right? So everybody's heard match the hatch. So our go-to in the summer and even into the fall, the spring, when the big fish are gone, is going to be, I would say 90% of the time we're throwing a 5-inch diesel minnow. Our two favorite colors, chartreuse. If it ain't chartreuse, it ain't no use. Pearl blue glimmer. This color is, I don't want to say underrated because I think a lot of people know it's great.
Yeah.
But God, this color just works great. Another one, you know, if you want to get out of the paddle tails and get into a straight tail jerk shad, the 7-inch scented jerk shads is a great lure. Again, keep it simple. You don't need all these crazy colors.
Yeah.
You can spend a lot of time changing colors out while you're out on the water, but yeah, the more time your lure is actually in the water, the more chances you're going to have fish.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but profile is really what you want to focus on.
Exactly.
The color is secondary for sure. You know, location and profile.
Color, you dial in your color when it comes to, like, you know, the conditions of the day.
Right.
You know, what color is the water, how dark is it, how bright is it. So that's where color comes into play with me. Now, we're not running HD hooks anymore. You don't need them. So we typically, when we're jigging, we're going to be anywhere from a 5/8 up to a 1, maybe a 1.5, but typically this is going to be your bread and butter here. This can knock out most of the areas. You know, we'll still fish a 1-ounce head, depending on current, down to 40 feet. You know, you can still get bottom. So you want to be able to make sure you got a jig head heavy enough to get down to where the fish are.
Right. And I will say in the summertime, at least I notice, the fish are not as close to the bottom.
No.
You're not fishing like the wintertime when you're bouncing bottom.
Right.
You're not doing that in the summertime. So you don't need as heavy as the head.
You're going to see a lot of either fish up high or fish suspended.
Right.
And so you need just the right jig head, and choosing that, you're going to use your fish finder to find out how deep those fish are, and then use the right jig head to get down to them without being too heavy to go under.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're too light, you're never going to catch the fish up high. So we'll get into...
Yeah. What combo?
You're
throwing all these fancy lures with.
So when we're talking rods for jigging, I think it's the most important time to have the right rod.
Right.
Because you really have to have a super, super sensitive. You want a light rod because you're going to be jigging it and fishing it all day long.
Yep.
And you need an extra fast tip. So if you're jigging correctly, right, vertical jigging or even casting out and bringing it back, you really aren't going to have a lot of weight on that tip. So when you're jigging, you jig it up, and then as that lure's falling, you want to just kind of barely have the weight of that lure on there. You don't want to. You don't want to really hinder that fall. You want it to fall naturally.
Yeah, you don't want to hinder the fall, but you also don't want a ton of slack on top of the water because you want to be able to feel that bite.
You got to have the perfect amount of tension.
Yep.
And it really isn't going to be much tension, so that's where that extra fast comes in. Because, you know, if you had a pool noodle, you really have to have a lot of weight on it so you can really get that sensitivity.
Right.
But these extra fast rods really help with that bite and feeling that bite.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, the slightest bite, you're going to feel it. That is why we use the Shimano X Pride. You know, we've tested out a lot of rods. We've broken a bunch. We've thrown a bunch in the trash after using them, but this is what we've landed on. This is what we've been using for the last 2.5 years, and I am blown away.
Yeah, what reel do you have that paired with?
Got on a Shimano Vanford 3000. So it's a really super light combo. You know, when you take the lure off, it's perfectly balanced. You can fish this all day long. What I really like about these Shimano rods is the X Pride has the High Power X. So it's a spiral wrap on the rod, and that is going to give me so much backbone that I can use this same light combo to catch the big fish, but also have a ton of fun catching the smaller fish in the summer because it's so light. So it really is a versatile rod. It's strong, super sensitive, super light. It's really hard to beat.
Yeah, for sure.
This is a 6/8 medium extra fast.
Yeah, and we got it rigged up. What pound braid are you using?
So we like to use 15-pound Power Pro, and then we'll use a 20, 25-pound leader. Fluorocarbon, we always use a Seaguar fluorocarbon leader.
Yep. And we have those all rigged up, ready to go in the store, exactly like Steve Griffin himself would use it. So I think that pretty much covers everything. Yeah,
we got it.
Definitely.
I'll be here, for the sale. We'll be here. So if anybody has any questions, come on out. I'll be here all day.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us today for our 11th seminar in our Light Tackle Marathon, and look for a new seminar dropping every day leading up to our big sales event on April 5th and 6th. You can click the link below for full event details.